So let's say I want to take a shot of these rocks and the sea and the waves crashing against them and all the rest of it. Let's construct that image. It's going to be a landscape type shot, so I want lots of depth of field. So therefore I'm going to use a very small aperture. I'm going to set an aperture of f/22. Now a very small aperture is going to cut away a lot of light. The next thing I need to do is to choose manly voice, choose my shutter speed to go with that aperture. Now you must do this looking through the viewfinder of your camera, looking at the light meter in the bottom, because if I point it down there and set it up on the back, I'm taking a light meter reading from here, not of the scene that I want to photograph. So looking through the viewfinder, and I'm going to show you this in the back of the camera in a minute. Looking through the viewfinder, I get myself in position and set up the shot that I want. Okay, at f/22, that's telling me I can only have 1/10 of a second shutter speed. I am in danger of getting camera shake. At the moment I'm using an 18mm lens, so it's best to have at least 1/20th of a second shutter speed. Otherwise, little movements I make could cause the picture to blur. My ISO is currently set on 200, which is the finest grain, the best colours, the best image quality. But I'm going to lift it up a bit to 400 ISO. And that is now going to allow me to adjust my shutter speed all the way up to 1/20th of a second. I know I'm safe and I can take the picture that I want to take of the waves crashing on the rocks. Let's just wait for a wave. Hopefully one's coming any minute. Here we go. Excellent. And there we go. I've got the shot that I wanted. Without boosting the ISO, I could not have made my shutter speed fast enough. The only way I could have done it would be to introduce more light. Well, that's not really doable out here, is it? Or use a wider aperture, but I don't want to do that. Let's take a look at a different scenario. Okay, so the new scenario is I've got rid of the shorter lens and put on the long one. Why do I want the long lens? Well, this kind of diffuse light that we just had a rain shower actually and had to shelter in the car, but now we've got some diffuse sunlight coming in, and that's beautiful light for a portrait. Long lenses are brilliant for portraits, and what could make a more dramatic backdrop for a portrait than that sea? Now I'm lucky enough to have my favourite model back with us. We got Lorna. Hello, Lorna.
Hello.
Hello. We got Lorna back. So Lorna, if you'd stand about here and just kind of gaze that way, sort of thing, okay? Brilliant, thank you. Bear with me while I get the camera set up. So, let's see what we can do. Okay, the sun's come out a little bit, so you're probably thinking there's enough light. Well, there is kind of enough light, but long lenses suffer from camera shake, just like I mentioned with the short one. Go watch the camera shake film if you don't understand what I'm on about. So with a long lens, to avoid camera shake, we need to use a shutter speed at least as fast as the lens is long. I'm using this is a 210mm lens on a full frame sensor. So that means that, where are we? We're up around 250, 275mm. So I need to get my shutter speed up well above the 250th of a second mark to ensure I don't get camera shake. On a windy day like this, it's even worse with a long lens, because not only is the wind buffeting the strap, it's buffeting the lens, everything's on the move, and I don't want a blurred picture of my best model. So let's construct the image. First off, long lens, because that's going to give me the look that I want, the shallow depth of field and the blurred background of the sea. So I'm going to move around and get my composition, and I think it's about here. Yeah, that looks fantastic, it really does. Choose my aperture. I want a wide aperture to blur the background. Wide aperture. This lens, the widest I'm going to get is 5.6. Again, looking through the camera, set up the exposure with the shutter speed. Let's just wind that up a bit. What have I got? I can get 160th of a second, even at the widest aperture. That really isn't going to be fast enough to ensure the camera's not moving. Well, I can't introduce more light, and I obviously can't open the aperture any wider because it's already on the widest aperture. The only place I can go is my old mate, the ISO. So, 200 ISO, I'm going to pump that up to 400. That should double my shutter speed, assuming the light hasn't changed in the moment I did it. Don't forget, you've got to chase the light all the time. Things are changing as you work. So let's have another little look. Okay, so now I can manually increase my shutter speed. I can get a 320th, which I think will be enough, and it shouldn't blur the image. I am going to put this strap around my neck because it's blown about all over the place. Lorna, do your kind of gazy over there thing for me. And the light on Lorna's face is beautiful at the moment. Look at that. Right, I can see the movement through the viewfinder of this jumping about all over the place. The light's changed. I've had to go to a 250th now. Hopefully that is good enough. Yeah, that's nice. I like that. I'm just going to check the sharpness. It's always worth checking sharpness while you're on location. Do you know what? I think that's a bit soft. I'm going to increase the ISO some more. It's probably camera shake. I'm going up to 640 ISO. This is going to introduce a little bit of grain, but it shouldn't be too bad, and it'll still be a nice picture. Do your stare again, Lorna. She really is a great model. Right, let's get that focused, and oh, buff it. Let's have a look. That's better, that's much sharper. Thanks, Lorna. You can go in the warm if you want while I wrap up. Look, where are you gone now? She's dropping things everywhere. Look, she's even got a very patient Joe, her boyfriend, here as well. Go on, you can give Joe a cuddle, he'll keep you warm. Ah. So there's a couple of ways you can use your ISO. Practical ways, which will help you achieve the images that you want. When you're choosing an ISO, or even indeed sorting out what you're going to do with any image, you need to think through what you're going to do with it before you take it. For example, are you going to make the image really big? Are you going to blow it up large? If you are, then using a high ISO, which will introduce some noise, some grain, that could be a problem, because when you increase the size of the image, that grain becomes noticeable. So what can you do about that if you can't increase the ISO? You only have really two options. One is to wait until the light is brighter so you can get the shot that you want. The third option would be you could use a faster professional lens with a wider aperture, or, and this is the most simple one, may I? Thank you, Joe. Use one of these. Provided your subject isn't on the move, you can stick your camera on the tripod and you can use a slower shutter speed. If your subject is on the move, that's another one. You're going to need a faster shutter speed if your subject is moving. If you've got someone running around, kids tearing about, they're going to blur in the picture because you're probably going to be moving too. So you're going to need a fast shutter speed. Again, your ISO can help you. Are you going to crop into the image? If you're using a high ISO when you're shooting, I strongly recommend you compose the shot in the camera rather than shoot a shot and then crop away the bits you don't want. Because when you crop away the bits you don't want, you're losing megapixels. You're actually enlarging a small portion of the image, which is then going to mean you're going to get more and more grain into it. Hopefully that's given you an insight into ways in which you can use your ISO practically to help you use those fundamental building blocks to assemble the image you want. ISO is a brilliant, really useful tool. I suggest you go and have a go with it. In the meantime, I'm going in the warm. Come on then, guys. Look at Joe, he's freezing, look. He's all hunched up.